Some people never recover from feeling unwanted. Not completely. They learn how to smile, how to function, how to look emotionally normal. But deep inside, something changes permanently. Because once a person truly feels emotionally unwanted for long enough, their brain stops experiencing love safely. Pause. They begin questioning everything, every silence, every delayed reply, every change in tone, every moment someone feels slightly distant, not because they are weak, not because they are dramatic, but because somewhere in their life, they learned people can slowly stop choosing you without warning. And after that realization enters someone deeply enough, they never love the same way again. The frightening part is, most people carrying this pain do not look broken at all. Sometimes they look independent, calm, emotionally mature, but often that strength is just years of emotional survival. And the saddest part? Many of them still secretly wonder what it feels like to be loved without feeling temporary. Feeling unwanted rarely begins with one dramatic moment. Usually, it happens slowly, quietly, repeated emotional moments that seem small from the outside. Being emotionally ignored, feeling less important than everyone else. Trying to talk while nobody fully listens, watching affection come easily to others while you constantly feel emotionally distant from people around you. And over time, the mind starts creating conclusions. Maybe I ask for too much. Maybe I am emotionally exhausting. Maybe people only tolerate me. Children especially absorb these feelings deeply because children naturally blame themselves for emotional distance. They do not think the environment is emotionally unhealthy. They think something about me must be hard to love. And once that belief forms early, it quietly follows them into adulthood. Pause. That is why many emotionally neglected people grow up becoming extremely careful human beings. Careful with emotions, careful with attachment, careful with vulnerability. Because at some point, their nervous system learned emotional closeness could suddenly disappear. After years of feeling emotionally unwanted, people stop reacting loudly. The pain becomes internal, more silent, more permanent, and eventually their entire personality begins adapting around emotional survival. Some become hyper-independent. They stop asking for help, stop expecting comfort, stop depending emotionally on anyone, not because they truly want isolation, but because needing people once hurt too much. Others become emotionally numb, not intentionally. Their emotions simply became exhausted. Because constantly hoping for emotional connection, then feeling disappointed again and again, eventually drains a person psychologically. Pause. This is why many emotionally wounded people appear strong, but often their strength was never peace. It was adaptation. There's a difference. Real emotional peace feels safe. Survival feels emotionally guarded all the time, and many people carrying rejection wounds live in constant emotional alertness without realizing it. Their brain continuously scans for signs of abandonment, a delayed message, a colder tone, a shift in energy, because emotionally rejected people learned early that small emotional changes can become painful very quickly. One of the saddest truths about emotional neglect is this: people who feel unwanted for too long eventually stop believing love can stay. That belief changes everything. Now affection feels temporary. Kindness feels suspicious. Connection feels unstable. Even when someone genuinely cares about them, part of their mind still waits for abandonment. Pause. This creates exhausting internal conflict. They want love deeply, but struggle trusting it once it arrives. They crave closeness, but panic emotionally when someone gets too close, because closeness creates vulnerability, and vulnerability once became associated with pain. So now they overthink affection instead of relaxing into it. They question whether people secretly dislike them. They apologize constantly. They fear becoming emotionally too much. Not because they are insecure by nature, because emotionally neglected people often spent years feeling emotionally replaceable, and eventually, replacement becomes something they expect automatically. People who feel unwanted often live with two emotional realities at the same time. One side desperately wants connection. The other side fears it completely. And that conflict becomes mentally exhausting because every relationship now carries hidden fear underneath it. Fear of abandonment, fear of emotional inconsistency, fear of caring more than the other person, fear of eventually becoming emotionally forgotten. Pause. This is why some emotionally wounded people pull away suddenly, not always because they lost feelings. Sometimes because their nervous system became overwhelmed by emotional vulnerability. So they emotionally retreat before attachment becomes dangerous. Others test people unconsciously. They become distant, quiet, hard to read, not to manipulate, to protect themselves emotionally. Because when someone has repeatedly experienced emotional rejection, their brain stops associating closeness with safety. Now closeness feels risky, and eventually they begin surviving relationships instead of emotionally living inside them. The deepest damage of feeling unwanted is not loneliness itself. It is what loneliness slowly teaches a person about themselves. After enough rejection, people stop saying, "I experienced intense emotional pain," and quietly begin believing, "I am the problem." That belief changes identity. Now they struggle accepting compliments, struggle believing affection, struggle imagining someone choosing them fully. Pause. Many adults carrying rejection wounds still behave like emotionally cautious children internally, still afraid of being ignored, still afraid of emotional replacement, still afraid of becoming unimportant again. That is why they over-explain themselves, why they apologize for existing emotionally, why they become uncomfortable needing anything from people. Because emotionally unwanted people often learned, needs create disappointment. So now they try becoming emotionally self-sufficient, even when they are internally exhausted. And the tragic part is, many people carrying this wound do not even realize how deeply it shaped them. They think, "This is just my personality," without realizing it may actually be years of emotional adaptation. But maybe emotional numbness was never weakness. Maybe it was protection. Maybe distance was not coldness. Maybe it was survival. Pause. Human beings adapt to emotional environments constantly. A person raised around emotional safety learns trust naturally. A person raised around emotional inconsistency learns self-protection naturally. Neither response appears from nowhere. And sometimes, understanding this changes something important internally, because people begin realizing, "I was not difficult to love. I was emotionally surviving environments that never felt emotionally safe." That realization does not erase pain instantly, but it removes shame from the wound. And shame is often what keeps emotional suffering alive the longest. Slowly, people begin separating who they truly are from the survival behaviors they developed. And for the first time in years, they stop viewing themselves as emotionally broken. Some wounds never disappear fully, but they can become quieter, especially when someone finally experiences emotionally safe connection. Not perfect connection, safe connection. There's a difference. Pause. Safe connection does not constantly threaten abandonment. It does not make someone feel emotionally disposable. It does not force someone to earn basic affection. And for people who spent years feeling unwanted, that kind of emotional safety can feel unfamiliar at first, even uncomfortable, because healing often feels strange to nervous systems trained around emotional unpredictability. But slowly, something changes. The mind becomes less defensive. The heart stops preparing for loss constantly. The nervous system begins understanding. Not everyone leaves. Not every silence means rejection. Not every emotional closeness ends painfully. And maybe healing is not becoming fearless. Deceit. Maybe healing is simply learning that your existence does not need constant justification to deserve love. Some people become emotionally distant not because they hate love, but because love once made them feel deeply unsafe. And after enough years of feeling emotionally unwanted, a person can start believing they must suffer to deserve connection. Pause. That belief silently follows them everywhere. Into friendships, relationships, family connections, even moments of happiness, because part of them still expects emotional loss eventually. And maybe that is why emotionally neglected people become so exhausted. Not because they feel nothing, but because they feel everything while pretending they are okay. Pause. Some people are not cold, not detached, not hard to love. They are simply carrying emotional wounds that nobody ever noticed properly. And sometimes, the most healing thing a human being can experience is finally realizing they were never too much to love in the first place.